It feels so good to do this show after a month of not winning for the 49ers. I know there was a bye week in there, but it's been a month. Think about that for a second. A whole month since Ryan and I have done this show, and the 49ers are coming off of a win. It feels amazing, but there are still many unanswered questions that we have. There's things that we want to talk through as far as the rest of the season goes. What did this game look like? And just laying out what the rest of the NFL looks like and how the 49ers stack up. And we're going to do all of that next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, it's a Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning, I guess, where Ryan is at. Ryan, my man, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for respecting the West Coast this morning. I appreciate that. We're still rising and shining out here, man. But yeah, I'm feeling good, man. Like you said, I thought we were in the early 2000s there for a minute. It's been a minute since we got a W. It feels good, man. I'm glad to be here with you, sir.
Yeah, it definitely has been a minute since they got the W, but isn't it interesting how one win against a very good Jacksonville Jaguars team can just kind of seemingly right all the wrongs as a fan? I know, like, we have to break it down and come up with things and, figure out, are they as good as what we think and all of that. But just the fan side of things, it feels so much better today, 2 days after a win, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. I got my coffee going, still on the victorious Tuesday, I guess. It's still kicking. So yeah, I mean, a lot of things to be optimistic about, happy about, some remarkable things going on with this team, and I'm excited, man.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things going on with this team, and I actually don't know where you're going with this. And this, I like when there's topics that I have no clue as far as what's about to be said and what we're going to talk about. But this was a topic you just kind of threw at me last minute, or last second, I should say, pun intended, and said, "Hey, let's talk about this interesting records." I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what the hell that means, Ryan, but why don't you walk us through it?
Yeah, man. So two guys I want to talk about this morning. First of all, part of this remarkable season is CMC's play. So I'm going to talk about what he's doing this season and why that's so remarkable and what it means historically speaking from the 49ers perspective. So first of all, CMC is leading the NFL in rushing yards with 747 yards. He has 9 rushing touchdowns and averages about 4.9 yards per carry. He also leads all running backs in receiving yards with 339 and has 4 receiving touchdowns. And he's tied for first with Raheem Mostert, of all people, for the most total touchdowns with 13 in the NFL right now. And what's remarkable from a historical standpoint is I was looking at, like, the best yards per game season throughout the 49ers history. CMC is actually having the 4th best yards per game season by a running back in 49ers history, with 83 yards per game behind Frank Gore in 2006 with 105 yards, Garrison Hurst in 1998 with 98 yards, and Roger Craig in 1988 with 93 yards. So this is the 4th best season by a running back as far as yards per game is concerned, and there's strong history of elite running backs on this team. So speaks highly of what CMC is doing. So that's what I wanted to share in regards to CMC. I got some Brock Purdy stuff, but before I did that, I want to get your take on what I just shared in regards to CMC.
I mean, all of it is incredible. It speaks to how good CMC is and how much of a boost he was for this team. Literally the first week he was here, all the way through last season and into this season. And I love it all. But what is the cost is really the question that I have. All these things are amazing, but what is the cost long term? Running backs at 27, that a lot of times that's when they start to hit the downhill slope a little bit. Now, I know he may go a little bit longer because he's really done a fantastic job of taking care of his body his whole career. Not all players are like that, by the way. That's why some players break down earlier than others, but he's done a phenomenal job of that. That being said, the last time he was at this amount of touches in a season, he was basically shut down for the next 2 seasons. And if that happens, I mean, he's 27 now. Next year he goes into 28. If he can't be productive next year, I mean, his career essentially is like the guy is pretty much done. So That's what I wonder. What is the cost? And really, even more importantly, not next season and the season after. The 49ers are trying to win a Super Bowl this season. What is the toll that's happening right now? How is that going to affect things when they need him most late in the playoffs? Those are the questions that I have.
Yeah, I hear your concern. I'm just hoping they win a Super Bowl this year. I mean, if they win
Right.
a Super Bowl
I
this year,
agree.
I could care less what happens next year. Now,
For sure.
whether that happens or not, I don't know. What I did like about this last game, and I'll dive into Brock Purdy stuff here in just a second, but what I did like about this last game is it felt more diverse. Everybody was involved. And even though CMC got a lot of touches and he was the primary focus, some of those numbers were skewed because at the end of the game, they were trying to get him his record, which, I kind of understand. But overall, I felt like the offense was more diverse. Brock Purdy had 26 passing attempts through, just over 3 quarters, which is more passing than we're used to seeing from the 49ers. So I'm hoping that continues and they continue to spread the ball around moving forward. And like you said, man, ultimately I want CMC to be healthy. But I thought it was pretty spectacular from a historical standpoint where he stands.
Well, I I felt that way watching the game as well, but then I went back and looked at how many touches he had. He still had like 23 touches in essentially 3 quarters of play. I know that they brought him in to try to break the record, but really he sat out a majority of the fourth quarter like everybody else. And when you look at his touches and you add up all the other running backs' touches, which was essentially Mitchell, you add up Debo's touches, you add up Kittle's touches, and you add up Ayuk's touches, he still had more touches than all of them combined by like
Yeah.
6 or 7 touches. I'm not for sure on that, but I know for sure he had more, and I think it was by about 6 touches. That's not ideal. It's just not.
Yeah. Yeah. And you brought up somebody that I've been, you know, Elijah Mitchell, man. I think he's just toast, bro. Like I think he ran nine attempts for 2.9 yards per carry.
Mm.
It's Jordan Mason time. I was trying to be positive. We were talking about records and stuff, but since you brought up Elijah Mitchell, that's something that like. Thank you, my guy Josh.
Since you drug me down into the negativity here, let me go down that line. Yeah,
yeah. Elijah Mitchell, man, just doesn't look like it, bro. We need Jordan Mason. I agree with my guy Josh here. Like
yeah.
Jordan, like we've been saying this is ruling the face. I don't know if it'll actually happen, but at some point, I hope Kyle understands that what he has in Jordan Mason and that Elijah Mitchell might just not be that guy anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. What's Brock Purdy's?
All right. Well, every Tuesday, let me start off by reading some of these things, and then I'll get into the historical standpoint. But every Tuesday, I post Brock Purdy's statistics, how he compares with the rest of the league, where he ranks, and he jumped up in a lot of categories today. So real quick, I'll just read them off. Brock Purdy after week 10, completions 23rd, attempts 26, completion percentage 7th, yards 11th, average yards per catch first with 9.3 yards per game, 11th. His long jumped up from 42nd to 12th with that.
I told you all it took was one. That's
right.
That's the interesting stat. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one. Passing touchdown, he's tied for 9th with 15th. Interceptions, he's tied for 10th with 5. Sacks, tied for 10th with 16. QBR and rating first in the NFL. So Brock Purdy has jumped up quite a bit after that game.
Can I say this?
Yes, sure.
Because you do this every Tuesday with these stats, and I love that you do it and you post it on Twitter as well.
Yeah.
And you give like a, hey, he went up or he went down, just how he's trending.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as that long touchdown happened, I immediately thought of you and your Tuesday stat. I swear on everything. That was the first thing that came up, and I was like, well, I wonder where he ranks now. Yeah.
Yeah, big jump from what was it, 42nd to 12th? It's quite a jump.
Yeah.
So that was huge for him. That was the longest completion of the season, longest completion in Brock Purdy's career. So that was huge for him to get that feeling of those explosive plays. I think is great. But yeah, so all that being said, I also looked at how Brock Purdy is trending in yards per game because right now he's trending. I didn't even tell you his trends, and I should get your take on that before I jump forward. But he's trending 4,399 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Before I go forward, what's your take on that season? 4,399 yards, 28 touchdowns, 9 interceptions.
I mean,
that's how he finishes.
9 games. I feel like those numbers might be off. I swear I did the calculations and it was a little bit higher. Maybe I did them wrong. It was at like 2 a.m. I'm not going to lie. I'm weird like that. These are the things I do. But either way, I mean, I think that's a pretty damn good season. That's the type of season that this team needs. That's the type of season that you expect from a young quarterback that you think might eventually become the franchise guy. Although I don't necessarily believe that. I think a lot of people do. And I think that if he's doing those things, then he's at least trending in the right direction. And I think that that's where we want him to be. We talked last week and we talked about what do the 49ers need to do to get back on track. And one of the things that we talked about was having the team around Brock raise their game back up. This whole putting it on a second year player is not ideal. I don't care how great he is. CJ Stroud right now might be putting together the best rookie season of all time. If CJ Stroud was the quarterback of this team and this team was relying on CJ Stroud to be the reason they win a Super Bowl game in and game out, that would not be ideal either. So same thing goes for Brock. Still in his second year, still lots of career ahead of him, a lot of learning to do. You don't want every game to be on him. Now, there's going to be a time where it likely will have to be on him. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But for a majority of the season, that's not your path to success. So I think the efficiency and what he's delivering is exactly in line with what this team needs in order to have a chance to win a Super Bowl. So I think he's doing great.
Yeah, I think so too. And so that 4,399 yards jumps out at me, right? So I went and looked. That would be the most yards by a quarterback in 49ers history, which made me want to dive in deeper as far as like the yards per game. You know, it is a 17 game season,
For
so I
sure.
was curious of how it would stack up yards per game. But Brock Purdy is actually trending to be the third all time for 49ers quarterbacks in yards per game with 258 this season. If he continues at this trend and finishes at this trend, behind Garcia in 2000 with 267 yards per game, and Young in 1998 for 278 yards per game, who was first. So, I mean, Brock Purdy's doing some amazing things, man. It really is encouraging. Like I wrote this long tweet on my X or Twitter, whatever it is, this morning. And it just in regards to like the history of quarterbacks, you know, me being born in 1979 when Joe Montana was drafted to the 49ers, watching Joe, watching Steve Garcia, all of that leading up to where we're at right now. I'm very encouraged. I mean, what Brock Purdy is doing is it's tremendous. It's remarkable. You know, the only reason I'm hesitant is just because of the last 20 years of this team. Like thinking that Cap was the guy, then that fizzled out. Thinking Jimmy was the guy, then that fizzled out. Thinking Trey might become the guy, then that never even developed. And now Brock Purdy, the way he's playing, it looks great. I'm just gonna hold off a little bit more. I want to see him win, like put the team on his back, you know, come from behind, carry the team, win a game for us. Once I see that, man, there's really nothing else to hold off on in regards to Brock Purdy. So I'm just kind of waiting for that. But what he's doing is remarkable, man.
Yeah, most certainly is. And like I said, I was actually having a DM conversation with 187, who most people know in the chat. And we were just talking about, he was razzing me about the Josh Allen thing. We were kind of going back and forth about that. But ultimately, of course, we got on the conversation of Brock Purdy and the 49ers. And really what it comes down to is for this team right now with Kyle Shanahan, I don't know of many quarterbacks that fit exactly what is needed. And that is a comforting feeling when we're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. What does the future look like? I don't know. I mean, I have my opinions. I know you have your opinions. Everybody in the chat has their opinions. But really, right now, that is irrelevant. We need to worry about what's happening this season. And as long as this team can stay healthy and play good football around Brock, we know that Brock can play essentially, I mean, elite football. Really, it's not just good football. He can play elite football when everything around him is right. So as long as that trend stays, I mean, they're going to be tough for anybody to beat.
Yeah, I agree with that, sir. Yeah. So I'm glad I was able to find that information I wanted to share with all the viewers today.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a good find. Keenan says, tuning in while working. I hope you guys are having a great morning. Much love. You too, Keenan. I hope you're having a great morning. Thank you for tuning in as always and supporting the way that you do. Okay, let's talk about some of the unanswered questions with the 49ers. So going into this game, I think there was 1 week questions that were certainly answered as far as, you know, what does it look like with Chase Young? Can Steve Wilkes bounce back? Those are kind of 1 week questions that were certainly answered. But when you look at the course of the season, long term, and can this team win a Super Bowl? There's certain questions that we have about this team that I don't think were necessarily answered in this win against the Jags. Great win against a very good team. They way outperformed what I think most people expected. I mean, people that were realistic looking at the Jags coming off of a bye, traveling East Coast, 5-game win streak, 3-game losing streak. It's one thing to think the 49ers were going to win, and I did, but to think they were going to blow them out like that, that's just, you're either Nostradamus or you're just like the biggest fan in the world and won't take anything other than a blowout as the right answer. So it was a phenomenal win. But in that win, I think there's still so many unanswered questions about this team. And we can go back and forth and we can hold each other accountable. Maybe I'll say something and you're like, hey, I think that question was actually answered in this game. And let me tell you why. I'll start. First one, is Jake Moody reliable? I don't think we got the answer to that question. In fact, I think we got more questions to the question because he was so shaky. He was hugging the right upright the whole game long. I don't know. I don't know if Jake Moody can be the guy if they need a big field goal in a big moment this year. That is still a question that is unanswered for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if anything, I felt a little more sketchier after watching Moody. He made both of his field goals, but they were like barely in there. Like on TV, you're like, did that go in? So, one of my fears this season is that we're in like, NFC Championship or Super Bowl, and it comes down to Jake Moody kicking. That scares the hell out of me thinking about that because we have no idea. It's just we don't have a history on him, right? And he's had a couple of shaky kicks. In general, he's made most of his kicks outside the 2 games. So it's just like who knows? It's definitely an unanswered question. And hopefully we find out the answer in a positive form at some point and not in the negative form when it matters most. That's one of my concerns for the season. Definitely an unanswered question.
Absolutely. Is there any unanswered questions that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know the answer, but maybe it's not unanswered. But I don't know if. So it was great to see Oliver subbed out. They slide Diamador Lenore into nickel corner, and they popped Ambry Thomas out there. But like, can Ambry Thomas really answer the call when he's going against guys like Metcalf, like AJ Brown, like Mike Evans, who are all on the itinerary for the upcoming games? Zay Flowers for the Ravens. It worked against this Jaguar team. But I don't know how it's going to stack up against these elite receivers, especially teams that have great offensive lines. Like when we go against the Eagles, for example, who having a good offensive line, who can slow down our pass rush a little bit and buy the receivers more time. Can Ambry hang with those elite receivers for long periods of time? That part, I don't know. I think that's still an unanswered question. I kind of feel like, unfortunately, I think the answer is no, if I'm being real, but we'll see. I'm hopeful that I'm wrong.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about them as we get into the show, but I agree. I mean, that was the biggest realistic area that I thought that they should address during the trade deadline. I know that we would love for the offensive line to have been addressed, but that's just not that realistic at the trade deadline. During the trade deadline, it was like, okay, pass rusher, are you going to get a corner? And I think most people preferred the corner. Although getting Chase Young was certainly fantastic, I think there's a lot of things that having Chase Young on this team did for them, not just an individual impact, but overall, I think most of us would have preferred a number 1 corner. Now, I know that they swung at one. They were unable to get him. It didn't make a lot of sense for them to give up a ton of assets. I understand that, but it is definitely still a question mark. And I don't think one blowout win against the Jags really did we have those answered, because even at times in this game, it got shaky. There was the deep completion to I believe it was Kirk, and then Ambry Thomas for as much of an awesome play as he made, and I was so happy for him that he was able to do that. He then gets a pass interference a little bit later. They just weren't really tested in the way that some of these other teams are going to test them. So I agree. I think that's still a question. All right.
And well, real quick, Richard Gonzalez brings it up, and I've seen it going around. The Giants released Jack Jones. I believe it's the Giants, right? Yeah.
No,
Giants.
Patriots.
Patriots released Jack Jones. Yeah. Should the Niners snatch him up?
I mean, only if you think that he's a better option than anybody else on the team. And I don't know that he is or that he isn't. I mean, that's something that the 49ers can internalize. What I can say is he had a really good, I think he was a rookie last year. He actually had a really good rookie season. This year, he's been absolute dog water and hasn't really been able to get on the field. So I don't know how good he is or how good he isn't. Also, I do know that corners who are good
Don't
that
get
lead the
released.
Patriots are no
Yeah.
longer good usually.
Yeah.
And usually, if a corner is being let go that easily by the Patriots, they're probably not a very good player. That is one position that they have mastered. So I don't know if I would necessarily, it'd be like if the 49ers got rid of a defensive lineman and another team's like, you know what? We're going to go get him and think he's going to be a difference maker. Arden Key, great example.
Right.
Ebukam, great example. There's a reason that the 49ers are letting him go. They think that they can do better or at least find somebody that's cheaper to do the same job. If the Patriots are letting him go, chances are he's probably not that great, but maybe he is. I don't know.
Yeah, Belichick knows his defensive players, and he tends to get rid of them at the right time. So it does make you wonder if he's that guy or not, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, another unanswered question that I have.
Hmm.
Can Kyle coach loose in big moments? I mean, Kyle, for as great of a coach as he is, I think the one drawback that people would point to is not being able to come from behind in the fourth quarter thing. I know some of the statistics are overblown. Like, oh, if you're down by 8+ points, the 8+ points thing, I would venture to guess if you look at every coach across the NFL, that number is skewed heavily in the
Right.
loss column. But the
Right.
one where it's like if they're down at any point by 3 points or more at any point in the fourth quarter, they have like one win and 39 tries or whatever that stat is. That stat is a real stat, I believe. That says that you don't have the ability to come back. And on the flip side, people may say, well, that stat is definitely going to be skewed as well, for sure. But how many of those same leads has he given up since he's been here? Because we've seen it in big games where they have had the 10-point lead in the fourth quarter and have unable to come through with a win. But vice versa, you can't come from behind yourself and come up with a big win. So I would say Kyle coaching loose in big moments. I still want to see that. And I don't necessarily think we got any of those answers in this game either.
No, and I don't think you can. You
You're not
honestly, you
going
really
to tell the playoffs, probably,
right.
right?
Exactly. That's kind of what I was thinking. Or if you're in the regular season and every game counts as towards the play, like making the playoffs. But
Yeah.
Kyle has shown it's not only like coming back from behind; it's also protecting the lead. Like if you have, we've seen twice in the Super Bowl
And
where Kyle
protecting your
Shanahan.
quarterback,
And so
all of
there's
the
another
above.
one. Yeah, so those are definitely unanswered questions for me. Like, can Kyle be clutch? Really, that's the question. Can Kyle be clutch? Because he's shown a couple times that he hasn't been. He's almost like, I don't want to say it, but when everything's going right and his plan's working, he's phenomenal. But can he be clutch when the ish hits the fan? Right, that's kind of a question under Kyle Shanahan. We still, so far, the answer's been no. Doesn't mean he can't change that this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other unanswered questions?
Well, I mean, unanswered questions. So one of my things when we signed Feliciano, like I'm just like everybody, I'm wrong about a lot of things. But one thing I said, and I was adamant about, is I think Feliciano is one of the top 5 linemen on this team.
Yeah.
And to me, he went out and showed it and proved it in this last game that he's probably better than Burford and McKivitz both. So I guess the unanswered question would be: are we playing these guys in the right positions? Should Feliciano be taking somebody's spot? What does that mean? What spot, etc. Right? Like, because obviously Trent Williams, he's pretty good, so we're gonna leave him there at left tackle. Banks has been really good also. Banks did play right guard in college next to Mike McGlinchey, of all people. So he's used to playing a right guard. Feliciano's played every position but right tackle. I think Brendell's doing good enough at center. So the question is, how do we insert Feliciano? Because I feel like he's one of the top 5 linemen on this team, and he absolutely needs to play. What I think the 49ers are going to do is rotate him with Burford, but I'm not sure that's the answer. I think he needs to take either Burford's spot and we pop Burford out to right tackle, or we put Jalen Moore over at right tackle, and maybe we have a whole new right side. I'm not sure. There's a couple of options there. I was just kind of curious what you think and what the answer is. How do you
Yeah, I
improve this
mean,
line?
we'll talk about it. I actually have that as one of the topics, so
Oh,
we can
gotcha.
talk about how we can how they can fix the line because I think some of the solutions are on this roster, and that is rare. A lot of times when you have a problem this late in the season and trade deadlines pass, sometimes the solution is not there. And I believe that the solutions might be there, and there's multiple different ways that they can attack it. And we'll talk through that. I know that you talked about one of those ways with Grant, so I'll let you lay that case out. And then I've got a couple other ways as well. I do think that some of the answers are on this roster, and I'm curious to see if they actually look into those or if they continue to do what they've been doing. I would say, and I agree, that is an unanswered question. The last question that's still unanswered surrounds
Mhm.
Brock Purdy, and that's, you know, if this team is playing from behind and needs him to go win the game in a big moment, can he do that? I think the early returns right now, people say, oh, no, he can't. You know, he didn't do it when he had his chance. Yeah, but he's still a very young player. That doesn't mean just because he didn't do it doesn't mean he can't do it. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
he won't do it later. And vice versa. I mean, I definitely would feel a lot more comfortable about it if he had done it, but that doesn't mean that he will do it when it happens in the playoffs, if it happens in the playoffs, and I assume that it will. I think that is a question that again, we're not likely going to know for sure until it happens in the playoffs. But if it does happen again throughout the season and he is able to go actually win that game and be the reason that they win that game, then I think that will make people feel a lot better going into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think we saw like a little glimpses of it against the Raiders last year. Maybe you can make an argument for the Seahawks in the playoffs. That was kind of close going into what half, I believe. So we've seen small glimpses of it, but
Mhm.
this year when he, you know, uh, some people say the Browns, he showed it by putting him in field goal position. I think that was more BA, to be honest. That was like a 4 yard dump off to the wide open, and BA took it like 30 yards. Um, I don't know, man. Against the Vikings and against
Cincy.
Cincy, he failed to do that. Now, because he hasn't really done it, doesn't mean he can't do it. So it's still an unanswered question. And I think he's gonna have those opportunities in the future, and he's gonna, be able to see, show everybody that he can do it. When we get to the playoffs, things get tighter, and I'm pretty convinced that at some point throughout this season, whether it might even happen sooner in the Eagles game or a Seahawks game or whatever, so we might see even sooner. But definitely in the playoffs, I think there's going to be a time where he has to answer the bell, and he'll get that opportunity. And I think that's the one thing that I'm still want to see from Brock Purdy really is just can he be that clutch guy when we need him the most? Because he's pretty much answering all these other questions already. I mean, he can be serviceable. He can run the offense. He can do a really good job when everything is going right, when he has all his weapons and they have the lead. The question is now, can he throw the team on his back and carry them to a 6 Lombardi? I don't know about that. It's yet to be seen, but I'm not going to say he can't. I just say we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and I agree, Mike. I mean, that's kind of the statement is so far the sample size is small, and I would say the answer is no, but that is not set in stone. Like we're not etching his career and saying, "Oh, it's impossible," or even impossible this season. I think seeing it play out would kind of ease minds a little bit. But
Mhm.
again, even if we see it play out, that doesn't mean that it's going to play out when the moment matters most either. So who knows? We'll see how it goes. But those are some of the unanswered questions. Am I
Right.
tripping? I feel like I hear like a watch beeping or something. I don't know if that's
It might be my fan. I got a fan and it clicks. Let me see if I can turn off the background noise for
okay.
you.
All right, all right.
Yeah, it might be what it is.
I keep hearing like a watch beeping or something. I don't
It's
know if
like
anybody
do
else is
do
hearing it.
do do.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
it's
it
my
like the metal string thing, like hitting every once in a while?
yeah, it's my
I
fan,
got
and I
you.
I can't fix it right now. I'll have to get it for the next show, guys. Sorry, my apologies. The mic must be super sensitive today.
Goodness sakes. Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah,
I don't know if they hear it or not. If not, then no big deal.
I
All
can
right.
turn off the fans if you guys want me to. Let me know, and I'll take
Yeah,
the
you
call.
guys say in the
Turn it off.
chat if it's just me, I can deal with it.
Mm,
We can't hear it. I don't hear anything.
Well, shoot. Hold on. Let
Jesse
me
with tinnitus.
hold down the show. I'll be right back.
I don't- nice. Good job, GTC. That's a great comment. Keenan says, how do you feel about Steve Wilkes' adjustment this week? He said he was built for this, and he showed every bit of that on Sunday. I'm not 100% sure that we are fully there yet, but these boys balled out this weekend. I agree. That was probably one of the best things ever is seeing that happen for Steve Wilkes, because that is exactly what he said. He said, I'm built for this. And then he showed he was exactly built for this. I don't think he did anything crazy this weekend. I think his game plan was sound. I think his second half adjustments all season have been very good. I think early on in games, things have been a little bit shaky. This week, I felt like the players came out with their hair on fire with something to prove. They definitely are sitting on 3 straight losses. They listened to it through a whole bye week. If you listen to Debo Samuel talk when he's on with Kay Adams, or Fred Warner talk when he does his podcast with his wife, it was clear that they knew they were being doubted and they wanted to shut everybody up. That is great early in November. Now, can we do it throughout the course of a season? That's really all we care about. But this team had an axe to grind, and deservedly so. And I think that they went out and made all the plays necessary. I think Steve Wilkes was maybe slightly better than what he has been with some of his adjustments. I love that he decided to put Ambry Thomas in versus Oliver, not because Ambry's necessarily better than Oliver, but because they knew that from the slot, that is where receivers on the Jacksonville Jaguars were doing most of their work. So if they put Lenore in at the nickel corner slot or nickel corner spot, then that would allow them to be best equipped to handle guys like Christian Kirk and what have you. So I love those adjustments. I love that he would put Bosa and Chase on one side together, or put them up the middle and kind of move them around. All those things are great. I don't necessarily think he's been horrible at calling a game plan all season long. I think he was better, certainly, but I don't think he was necessarily the problem with this defense. I think effort probably was part of the problem. Coach and I talked about this, and I agree. And I think that just overall being tired, travel, everything was kind of weighing on this team, and they had an extra grind and they went out and did it.
I actually think he's one of the unanswered questions that is answered for me. Now, maybe some people still need to see
Yeah.
more, but I think one of the unanswered questions about coming into the season was, how is Steve Wilkes' defense going to look? How's the defense going to look under Steve Wilkes? And to me, it looks great. I like it. I'm down. I think he had a rough game or two, but he's smart enough to adjust. And I think him moving down the sidelines is actually a good thing. I think the 49ers defense is not going to be a problem at all this year. I think they're going to be good. I think they're ranked like 10th overall right now, but I think they'll creep up. They had a couple rough games, but I think they're going to end up being in that top 5 echelon.
Yeah, and that comes down to yards. But if you look at points per game, they're like probably top 3, right, I would imagine. And that's exactly what matters. You don't win by yards. You win by points.
Right.
Yards don't go on the scoreboard last time I checked. And they are still elite in that area and have been this whole season long. And definitely after a 3-burger, I'm sure that went right back down, and they're right where they need to be. So, yeah, I think the whole Wilkes talk was a bit overblown. If I'm just being honest, I think a lot of people wanted to take heat off of Purdy and felt like there was unnecessary heat on Purdy, which I think can also be true. I definitely don't put those losses on Purdy, never did. And I just like I didn't put the loss on Jake Moody against Cleveland. But I think a lot of people felt unnecessary heat on Purdy. And instead of answering the question directly and having a real conversation, they took the chicken shit way out, which was, let's blame everything on the defense. And I don't think that was right either. I think it was complete team losses is what we saw the last 3 weeks, not one player. And I think that we saw a complete team win this week, the same way we saw complete team losses the 3 weeks prior. And that's the reality of the situation.
I think we're looking at like unanswered questions. Like, is this defense good enough to win a Super Bowl under Steve Wilkes, or just in general? I think that answer is yes. I don't have really questions whether the defense is good enough to win a Super Bowl. I think the only questions kind of are on the offensive side and the coaching side under Kyle Shanahan. But I think as far as the defense, I'm not worried about the defense. I'm not worried about Wilkes. They are more than good enough to win a Super Bowl, in my opinion.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with that. James says, it's the same question every year. Can they beat teams as good as them in the postseason? But who has a better quarterback? Well, a lot of these guys aren't going to make the playoffs, actually. Burrow might not make the playoffs. He threw 2 picks in the fourth quarter. Josh Allen looked like hot garbage yesterday. They're not going to make the playoffs. Probably long term, the best thing that could happen to the Bills, they've needed a new coaching staff, I believe, for 2 or 3 years. And that's probably going to happen this offseason. I know Lamar Jackson, yes, of course. Jalen Hurts, who's PM? Patrick Mahomes, of course, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, I mean, of course, those teams are going to be tough to beat because they do have elite quarterbacks, but I think only 3 of the 5 of those. The good thing for the 49ers is 3 of the 5 of those are going to make the playoffs. The other 2 possibly don't. And reality is 4 of the 5 of those are in the AFC, which means the 49ers only have to beat one of them in the Super Bowl. They don't have to beat all 4 of them. It's not like they have to go through the gauntlet of elite quarterbacks to get to the Super Bowl. They got to beat Jalen Hurts, likely, and then they got to beat one in the Super Bowl. And I think that is doable.
Absolutely.
Keenan says, hold on. Jeez, I lost the super chat. There it is. One this I said. I don't know. One this I said is the Niners play like another animal when people are doubting them. This, if your typing is way off here, either that or I just can't read. Possibly both. This, if the 2019 season, we were called pretenders and had a monster season, got to keep playing with that chip. Okay, basically you're saying this happened in the 2019. This has happened every season other than the 2019 season, I'm assuming is what you're saying. And really, even in the 2019 season, they started off hot, and that was because most people did doubt them. I agree. Again, the big question comes down to, though, can they keep it up? They've done this 2 seasons in a row, and then they've basically sputtered out. And this team, at the key positions, the elite players are getting older and older every time that they do this. How many runs can they make and still hold up? And I said it going into the Jacksonville game. The question for me was not, can they turn this around? Because I think they will. I think they're going to look very good going into the playoffs and still be one of the better teams in the NFL. The question for me is, can they do this 12 weeks in a row if necessary to make it to a Super Bowl? And that is likely what's going to happen if they don't have a bye week. And I don't believe they will going into the playoffs. And those 3 losses, albeit are middle of the season losses that ultimately may not matter as far as playoffs or whatever, they possibly will matter when it comes to seeding. And that is the most important thing for this team. We've seen them bounce back. The question wasn't, could they bounce back? It's, can they bounce back and go on this 12, 13-week run, unlike they've been able to do the last 2 years? And we still don't know that.
In my opinion, honestly, I'm starting to look at this differently too, Jesse. It's not that they, play good when people are doubting them. It's that they play up to their potential finally, right? Like, this roster is really good, right? So when they're crap in the bed, it's not that, they're not good. It's they're playing down. And then when they're playing the way they're playing, like last week against the Jags, that's how they should be playing. They're a very talented roster. So they have moments where they just don't play up to their potential, when they get in little ruts. And then when they play the way they play, when they're having the success, that's how they should play, in my opinion, because this roster is, if not the best in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, Cosmo, what's hard to understand about that? Like, have you never seen Jimmy Garoppolo played elite in 2019? Is he an elite quarterback? I'll wait for the answer. I think the answer is no. I think we know that the answer is no on that one, but maybe you have a difference of opinion. But we've seen him play elite. Is Nick Foles played elite? Is he an elite quarterback? Carson Wentz played elite. Is he an elite quarterback?
Hey,
See how this goes? See how this works? Okay.
I've had elite
Yeah.
moments in open gym, but I'm not an elite basketball player.
Exactly. Yeah. I've had times where I've hit 5 or 6 threes in a row at an open run. Doesn't make me a very good basketball player. Like, I'm not going to the NBA anytime soon. So yeah, come on, man. These takes are not that crazy. I think you guys are sometimes make it out to be something that it's not. Yes, he's playing elite, and it's okay to say that. He is playing elite. Now, do we know if he's elite? I don't know. The only way that you know truly if he's elite is if he can stack years, not games, years. And can he do it when the talent's stripped away? We'll find out long term. But right now, he's certainly playing elite, and I am here for it. Okay, a couple. What was that?
body of work and sample size, right? Like
Exactly.
we need a sample size. We need to see if he can continue this. And he's playing elite. In order to become elite, you got to do this over multiple years in different situations and circumstances.
Right, exactly. Okay, so a couple questions I have that came out of this game as far as playing your best players, and we're going to talk about it from an offensive line perspective. You talked about it a little bit, but
Yeah.
I have two position groups that I think maybe there might be upgrades on the roster, or maybe we found upgrades. So for you, would you continue to play Jawan Jennings, or would you like to see Bell mixed in on some of those plays and see if he might just be better than Jennings at this point? How do you feel about that?
I really like what I've seen from Bell in the brief time we've had to see him play. There were some concerns in the preseason. He was responsible for 2 interceptions during the preseason, balls that hit him right in the hands. By
Yeah.
the way, I keep putting this in silent mode. I'm turning on the volume. I don't understand iPhones. I'll figure it out one day.
He's a
But
boomer.
as far
Listen, he was
I'm a
born in
boomer. Hey,
'79. Pretty
what are you gonna do?
old. Pretty old.
Yeah,
I don't know.
old guy.
I'm also very old. But not
Old
born in
guy.
the '70s. Not born in the
Yeah.
'70s.
Hey, you gotta be a real true player to be born in the '70s, you know? If you're born after '70s, I don't know. But anyways. Yeah, no, I like Bell, man. I like what I've seen from him. But Jennings is solid, man, especially in the run game, his blocking ability. Although I've seen tremendous effort from Bell in that same regard. I've seen him pancake a guy, right? So Bell is definitely encouraging. But I think I would stick with Jennings predominantly. That doesn't mean I don't want to like pop in Bell every now and then because I would like to see Bell play a little bit more. But overall, right now, I'm giving that spot to Jennings just because of his history. And he's pretty damn reliable in third down situations. That's why he's called third and one or third and Jawan. So I would stick with Jennings, but maybe mix in Bell every now and then.
Yeah, I just want to see them mix in Bell. I'm not saying for sure that he is better than Jennings at this stage, but I think talent wise, he's more talented than Jennings. I think he's more explosive than Jennings. I think he's a very willing blocker. If you watched him at Michigan, he was a very willing blocker. And
Yeah.
quite frankly, if you watch Jennings on film the last few weeks, he hasn't been a great blocker. I mean, one of the things that he brings to the table is that blocking, especially in the run game. He hasn't been great the last few games. He's been out of position. He was out of position, I believe, again this week on a couple snaps. So some of the things and some of the reasons why you would lean towards Jennings aren't necessarily there. He's really almost been non-existent for a big chunk of this season. I just think Bell might bring something to where it's at least worth looking into. The 49ers do this thing where they redshirt a lot of players. I just don't want to see Bell be that guy. I want to see him mixed in to see if he can give them a bit of a spark when they're down a little bit on offense. Because I do. I think him versus most number three corners is a mismatch. I do think he's going to be a pretty good player in this league. I think he is the long-term slot receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. And I think that I would feel a lot better about watching it play out throughout the course of the season and give him those opportunities and just see who the better player is out of those two so that when you go to make that playoff run, you're absolutely 100% sure you are playing the right guy at that position.
I mean, I know one thing. After, if you lose Debo, Ayuk, or Jennings, the next guy should definitely be Ronnie Bell. And I think they should mix him in, every now and then. But I just have come to trust Jawan Jennings. So, I still think, I don't think replace Jawan Jennings with Ronnie Bell. But I do agree that you should mix it in and see what you got a little bit more with Ronnie Bell.
Yeah, most certainly. And then the same question for Thomas and Oliver. What do you think they should do here? I mean, this was a situation where this week they played Thomas over Oliver, and then obviously Lenore kicked inside. Do you think that's a 1 week thing? Do you think that should be a weekly thing? How do you see this playing out? Or do you think just in general, maybe the answer is not on this team, or it's Womack or Luter or one of those other guys? What do you think?
I mean, ultimately, I don't think the answer is on this team, but you got to find an answer on this team,
Yeah.
right? And I think the answer that you find is you take it game by game, play by play, basically matchups, right? So in certain situations, Oliver might be the better matchup for the bigger, slower guys. Like if he was going against the 49ers and he had to cover Jawan Jennings, I think Isaiah Oliver would be better than Ambry Thomas in those situations. But when you have those smaller, quicker dudes, I think you need to pop in Ambry or Lenore or whatever. You got to make sure that maybe Womack. I think it's going to be, that's what we're going to see. It's going to be a per game, per matchup, per play type of thing at that nickel corner spot.
Yeah, certainly. That's exactly what it is. The way that I saw it is this was a matchup play more than this is the permanent solution play, because the last thing you want, if you're going against a team with two elite receivers that tend to stay outside and not play in the slot, then likely you don't want to do that, because then the mismatch is on Thomas, to where you can kind of hide Oliver in the slot a little bit, the way that they were able to kind of hide Thomas this week being on the outside. So I agree. I mean, I think this is going to be a week to week game plan thing, and shout out to Wilkes again for the great game plan and recognizing that and saying, hey, let's switch it up based off this week. I don't necessarily know that that's the permanent solution. Really, I think what we're going to see is week to week, this is going to be a competition. Womack, Luter, I think as they come back, they're going to be mixed into that competition. Oliver and Thomas, and all four of them are fighting to get on the field for that 1 week.
Right.
And depending on how they play, maybe they earn another week, or depending on matchups, maybe they earn another week. But I really could see a scenario where all four of them are the guy at some point to start a game at least and see where it goes, because I don't know that the solution is necessarily here.
Agreed. 100%.
All right. We talked about the offensive line.
Yeah.
And some of the solutions. And I think one thing we're going to agree on here is that Feliciano needs to be a part of that solution. Now, where he plays, who else plays, there might be some difference of opinion. And I don't know that either of us are right or wrong. I just think that there's multiple ways that this offensive line can improve. It's a choose your own adventure book. You remember those when you were a kid?
Loved
where you
them.
kind of you choose your own adventure, and
Go to
depending
page
on
78.
Yeah. Depending on what your choice is, you go to a different page and you had a different ending. That's what the 49ers offensive line is. They have multiple adventures to choose from here. And I think that most of them are a better solution than what the starting five had been up to this Jacksonville Jaguars game. Give me one of the solutions that you've come up with on how they can make this offensive line better. What would that starting lineup look like for you?
Go back, draft DeJuan Jones.
Not going to happen.
Honestly, I think, Richard Gonzalez nails my solution. That's what I would do. It'd be left tackle, Trent Williams, left guard, Aaron Banks, center, Jake Brendel. I keep calling him Mike Brendel for some reason.
It's fine. You can call him Mike.
Mike, he goes by Mike if you want to. Right guard, Feliciano, and right tackle Moore. I think Moore has shown that he's, to me, Moore is the better option over Colt McKivitz. I think he's proved it on that left side of the tackle when he was filling in for Trent Williams. I would probably go with Moore. I mean, you could pop out Burford for right tackle and take McKivitz out. You could leave McKivitz in there. I'm not sure, but I think that McKivitz-Burford combination is not a winning one, right? So maybe one of those guys would play better with another player next to him. Sometimes it is really important. Like, I played right tackle when I was a young man and a kid, basically. And that relationship next to your guard is actually important, because you guys work together in tandem. So maybe just mixing one of those guys in. Maybe Feliciano at right guard would help Colton McKivitz. I don't really think so, though. I think really what the solution would probably be Jalen Moore at right tackle. He's only played like 51 snaps at right tackle in his life, though. So that's the thing. He's played more left side. So it might be a challenge for him. I'm not sure if he's ready to go at that right tackle spot, but I just don't think Colton McKivitz is the answer, and I don't think Burford is the answer. What I think the 49ers are going to do, though, they're going to mix in Feliciano with Burford, and they'll probably leave McKivitz where he is. I think that's what they're going to do, kind of like last year how Burford was rotating. I think that's what the Niners are going to do. They're going to rotate Burford and Feliciano at guard, and they'll leave McKivitz at right tackle. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think that Feliciano at right guard is an upgrade. So if they make no other changes other than that, I'm with it. I think Feliciano at right guard, and then you have a multitude. There we go. English is tough. A multitude of different options when it comes to right tackle. Yes, you can leave McKivitz there, and I think just adding Feliciano next to him makes them better. Or you can try Moore. Maybe he works there, maybe he doesn't. Still, the most interesting thing about Moore to me is that when they drafted him, he was supposed to be a guard. That was the whole thing. They talked about him being a guard, and then they just never played him at guard. He's always been a tackle. So I don't know what happened there, but either way, playing him at right tackle might be a better option. We know that he's a decent left tackle. Can he play right tackle? I don't know. I think sliding Burford out to right tackle is also an option. I think he's actually better suited to play tackle than he is guard. I think his body type is built for that. I think what he did in college showed that he is more of a tackle. So I think he could be an option. I think Il Manning could be an option. I'm willing to try any one of them. If there's a possible upgrade to McKivitz, you've got to find it out. And again, I really think it's one of these things where the 49ers are in a good situation where they have a few games here that should be winnable. Tampa's one of them. You're going to have the Arizona game, although I think that game might end up being closer than what people think. Yeah. I think the Arizona game and then week 18, I think those are times to kind of figure this out and see if one of those other guys, much like the Jennings and we were just talking about
Bell.
Oh my God. Jennings and Bell situation. Just try it out. See who the better players are and have that solution going into the playoffs. I would hate to even think that McKivitz is the reason they lose a game. We're like, God, I just felt like there was possibly 3 better options on the bench and they didn't go with any of them. I would hate for that to happen. So I would say just mix it in, try it out. I think there are multiple solutions. Feliciano just being inserted makes them better automatically. But I think at right tackle, there is multiple things that you could do there and have potentially a better overall experience when it comes to the offensive line.
And there's 2 approaches to this too, right? There's what's best for this season. And then the 49ers are probably thinking what's best long-term, right? They drafted Burford. They really want Burford to work out or else it's kind of a wasted draft pick if he doesn't become that guy. And then Feliciano's an old dude. Trent Williams is not getting any younger. So they have to find solutions at both tackle spots. McKivitz is in contract for 1 more year. He could easily become a swing player, right? So it's not a big deal if he loses his spot. But guys like Burford, who you drafted to be that right guard, and if it doesn't work out, that's not good. That means you got another player that you need to find. So I think 49ers are considering all of that when making their decisions here. But really, I feel like they just, at this point, this is an all-in type season. You have a potential to win a Super Bowl. They need to just figure out what's best for right now.
Yeah, most certainly. So we'll see what they do. I have a feeling that you're right, that they're just going to do the rotation thing again. Sure, I guess. I don't know that necessarily.
No.
To me, that was a developmental play for Burford, and I think right now you're trying to win a Super Bowl. Right. Yes, you want to develop players. I get all of that, but you can only have a certain amount of patience. And right now, he's just not the better option at right guard. And so Feliciano should just play full-time snaps there. And maybe Burford can be the answer at right tackle, like I said, but he just shouldn't be getting any run at right guard. I just don't think that position is suited for him. I really don't.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, sir.
GTC Reels says, can Womack tackle now? Because he can cover for sure. I think that's the big question is, can he tackle now? That was a reason he was kind of a liability in the run game. He didn't get a lot of run last year because of that, but he is a hell of a cover corner, I think, or can be. Has showed flashes of that. And I think he's a playmaker. I think he's just around the ball. He did it on special teams last year. He did it in small moments during games last year when he was given the opportunity. So I think just having a player that is consistently around the ball, I mean, that's always a good thing too. So I would like to see him get some chances and see if maybe he can be the answer. Rob B says, I'm a member. Appreciate you. Thank you so much, man. And then Fish and Chips comes in and also became a member. Thank you so much, Fish and Chips. And then Juan or Jawan, however you want to say it, McKivitz might not play with an ankle injury, and we might have a blessing in disguise if that's the case. Great point. This is a great point. This right here, not that you wish injury on anybody, but if he could just have 1 week, not a long-term thing, but just 1 week where he sits out and they have to try something different, I think that long-term, that might be a great thing for the San Francisco 49ers. At least see somebody else there at the right tackle position. And if it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Maybe we're just wrong. Maybe McKivitz is the best option, and that's okay. if he's the best option, I have no problem with him being the best option. I just want to know for sure that he's the best option.
Yeah, when I saw that McKivitz was injured, I did that thought did cross my mind. I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm like, maybe this can be an opportunity for the 49ers to see what else they could put out there at right tackle. So good point, Juan.
Yeah, very, very good point. Well, that's it for the show. I want to say that I don't remember the last time that I actually even asked for this from y'all, but we are approaching a pretty big milestone. We're close to 14,000 subs. We're like less than 200 away.
That's huge.
If you guys are here on a regular basis and you have not subbed to the channel, please sub to the channel. Especially if you're here anyways. If you're going to be here anyways, just show some love and sub. If you're here and you don't want to be here or you don't think you'll show up again, sure, by all means. But if you think that you're going to be a regular on the channel and you haven't done so already, please hit the subscription button. It would go a long way in helping the channel out, helps the algorithm. And I know that you're approaching a milestone as well, Ryan. So
Yeah.
where are you at there?
Yeah, I think I'm about 80 away from. It's been 12 months. This is my wait, it's November, so I'm creeping into my 13th month. We're about 80 subs away from 6,000 subscribers.
Nice.
If you guys haven't subscribed yet, I would appreciate it. And actually, unlike Jesse, I don't care if you ever come back. Just subscribe. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. I hope you do.
So go to Ryan's channel and subscribe. Ryan G. Hensley.
Yeah.
You can check him out over there. Ryan, I love doing these shows with you, man. Thank you for making Tuesday afternoon go a little bit better for me. Hopefully I make Tuesday mornings better for you. Everybody in the chat, thank you guys so much. Raziki came in at the last second. Ryan, Larry misses you. Unblock him. Talk to him. Let Lev win. Hey, I don't want to have that conversation over on the channel. I think there are some, I will say this, knowing it from both sides, there are some underlying things there that you guys will never be privy to, that relationship will likely never be repaired. And that's okay. Two men don't always have to get along. It's not that big of a deal. They also don't have to hate each other. They wish each other the best, and that's all that matters. So that being said, appreciate y'all. Much love. I'll be back tonight with Behind Enemy Lines. Peace.